Hi, I'm Lily Peterson.
And I'm Paul Wilson. Welcome to Beyond Benefits with Benefits Pro. In this episode, we talk to Josh Butler, president of Butler Benefits and High Plains Health Plan. But first, as always, let's take a couple of minutes to catch up. How are you, Lily?
Good, good. Happy that I'm not traveling anymore. I feel like the whole month of January I've just been out and about, so excited to not leave my apartment for a couple of days. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Yeah, this is definitely not a week as we're recording that you would want to be out and about. And in fact, it might not even be possible in some areas because we're in the midst of this giant, kind of seemingly nationwide blizzard that's impacting lots of people. I was actually scheduled to go down to Nashville to go to Nelson Griswold's Ascend conference, which I always really enjoy. But unfortunately, it's had to be postponed because Nashville is just buried in ice and snow. So I feel so bad for everyone involved with that because we both know firsthand how much work goes into one of these conferences ahead of time. So I can only imagine the scrambling they've had to go through. So I feel bad, but I'm looking forward to whenever they reschedule.
That's fair. I feel like especially those southern states just don't have the infrastructure to, attack it the way, like Colorado would or Minnesota,
Mm-hmm.
for example.
Yeah, it's rough. So, but yeah, hopefully everybody who is out there is staying warm, and if you're traveling, staying safe. But I am looking forward to, in a couple of weeks, I will be going to the U Powered Symposium, which is another one of my favorites. That'll be in Savannah, Georgia. So hopefully by then everything will be kind of cleared up. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of a crazy start to the year. Speaking of, it's been a while since we've talked. We've been on a little bit of a short hiatus as we kind of closed out 2025, but it's so nice to be back talking with you, Lily. How's 2026 treating you so far? And most importantly, what are your big resolutions or your plans for the year?
Yeah. I mean, I know everyone says you can start goals whenever you want throughout the year. I don't know. I just love, love, love the beginning of New Year. It feels so refreshing after, trying to get everything done before the new year and the holidays and all of that stuff. So I love, starting over every year. I think it's so fun. Instead of like a big resolution this year, I made a bingo card, so it's a bunch of like little small ones. So for example, I have like read 12 books. I have, go on a road trip, something like that. Let's see, what else do I have? Oh, go skiing 3 times. So
Nice.
I got some things to do this year.
I love that. No, those are great. I like that idea of kind of like achievable, they're small, but like actionable things that you can do. I love that. I think I'm not so much of a resolutions kind of person, but I think for me, it's just kind of a good chance to kind of remind myself of what's important. As many listeners probably know, I recently took on an additional role, editor in chief of HR executive. And I'm super excited. Love that team. Love everything we're doing. And there's so much synergy between that audience and the Benefits Pro audience. But of course, along with something like that comes a lot of extra work and lots of new emails and all kinds of stuff like that. And so I think one of my big focuses in 2026 is finding the way to do the best work I can do while still maintaining that work life balance and sticking to those things that kind of keep you sane, whether it's something as simple as entering my old man era of bird watching or going on lots of walks, just those things that it's different for everyone, but those things that kind of keep you centered while you're doing the things you love, your career and the work that is so satisfying, also making sure that you fight against, burnout or getting overwhelmed. So I think that's kind of my general resolution for the year is just continuing to, keep that balance that keeps me going.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like a lot of people after the holidays and stuff forget to restart, revamp, like just take stock of, like you said, just everything that's going on and making sure you're taking care of yourself and prioritizing that as well as still doing a good job at work, which you always do, Paul, but
Well, thank you. So do you. Yeah, no, I know that, especially for a lot of our listeners too, this time of year is one where after the craziness of Q4, they're probably to some degree able to take a little bit of a deep breath. But I also know that the good fight never ends for so many of these people. So I know there's lots of
yeah.
planning meetings and reaching out to clients and prospecting and all kinds of stuff that is taking place right now. So hopefully everybody out there is doing that same thing, finding that important balance that they need to keep them going. So
Yeah.
awesome. Well, it's so nice to catch up with you. And just so everybody knows, we plan on getting back into more of a regular, cadence like we've done through most of 2025. But we appreciate everybody coming back and joining us for 2026. Really excited about our guest for today. I think many of our listeners probably know Josh Butler, but he's one of my favorite people in the industry, and I think just so genuine and kind, and I think that shines through in this interview. So we talk about the growing number of innovative solutions and strategies that are flooding the benefits and healthcare markets. We chat about the ups and downs of being an innovator and a leader in this space. And we talk a little bit too about the upcoming BenefitsPRO Broker Expo in Chicago, which I would be remiss if I didn't say I hope everybody listening is going to be joining us. If you ever have any questions about that, reach out. But we have another great lineup, a great agenda, and it's in one of our favorite cities, Lily, Chicago.
Oh, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
excited.
I know. I too can't wait to get there. And we also talk about a few things you might not know about what Josh describes as a city that feels like a small town, his home base of Amarillo, Texas. So, all that and more coming up next.
Joining us today is Josh Butler, president of Butler Benefits and High Plains Health Plan. Welcome to Beyond Benefits, Josh.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Lily.
Yeah, Josh, we're so happy you're here. How are things going in your world?
Doing well, Paul. Start of a fresh new year. It's cold in Amarillo today, but I always like this time of year. We get a little bit of reprieve. January's kind of a cleanup month, but it was a very busy fourth quarter. We're coming out of that, getting energized for 2026. How about you guys?
Yeah, we're doing well too. I think, covering the industry, we get a little bit of insight into the Q4 craziness, but I know that we don't have to deal with it nearly to the same extent that all of you do. But glad to hear you made it through okay. I know
I
that
made
there's
it.
no rest for the weary, but January, like you said, is all about planning, I'm sure. But I think most of our listeners probably know you pretty well. But for those who maybe aren't familiar with you and your companies, plural, can you give me a little background about yourself and what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. As Lily said at the top, I'm the president of a couple of companies, Butler Benefits and Consulting, which is our consulting and brokerage firm, which me and my wife started and launched in 2015. And then I'm also the president of High Plains Health Plan, which is a fully customized, what we would call an unbundled self-funded health plan that was launched in 2022. It's gaining a lot of traction. It's growing very rapidly. I stay pretty busy. About 95% of my work is probably associated more with High Plains Health Plan than Butler Benefits. I've got a great team in both organizations, and I get to invest most of my time and energy in the self-funded space and the risk management and cost containment space, and we do that through High Plains Health Plan.
Nice. I mean, how many employees do you have now? Because I know that I've been around you for a long time now and kind of seen your companies grow, but I don't know if I've had an update on exactly what that looks like.
So we're still a small organization by any measure. We're up to about 10 employees. So I always say we're a small but mighty team. We get a lot of work done and use a lot of technology. And man, I tell you, maybe we get to talk about it a little bit today, but AI is certainly starting to play a significant role in our practices, both with High Plains and with Butler Benefits. But creating new efficiencies, it's pretty exciting and scary at the same time, but it's certainly a technology that we're embracing and using it to gain efficiencies and help us with time management and things of that nature. But yeah, team of 10.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, we could definitely relate to that, right, Lily? A small but mighty team. A lot of people, I think, see Benefits Pro and the output we do, and when they realize how few people, especially are on the editorial side,
Right.
it only takes a few people if you have the right people, I think.
Well, if everybody's committed and impassioned and dedicated, it certainly helps.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. It is funny, I feel like a lot of brokerages and advisors, usually do have a small team. And so I think everyone can relate to that. Backtracking a little bit, would you mind talking a little bit about, your career so far, how you got to this point in your life, and how, that path and journey has shaped your current mindset and your passion for benefits and healthcare?
Sure. I mean, it's going on 20 years now that I've been in the industry, and much of my career is, I would just consider it pretty legacy, status quo. Just started out and wanted to always own my own business. My wife and I both come from a long line of entrepreneurs and business owners, and so I think it just kind of is in our DNA. So we always kind of wanted to have our own company and our own organization, and we found that with Butler Benefits and Consulting. But as we started to get more maturity and more experience in the industry and in this business, we saw that the real problems in our industry and are the problems that we face in healthcare and healthcare benefits are not solvable by I would say legacy plans and so we just started to say what can be done in healthcare. And it started a process here and it started a culture here of solving the underlying problems in healthcare. And then once you solve those problems or can solve some of those problems, you can start to solve some of the issues that we see in health insurance, health benefits. And that's why, High Plains Health Plan evolved into what it is today. Is it is a solution for a problem that we have in society, which is unaffordable and unaccessible health care. And so we're addressing those societal issues, and we're proud to do it. And it gives me, it reinvigorated my career. It was a whole lot more challenging, obviously, and it is a whole lot more challenging than just selling a product, and I'm not saying that to demean anybody in our industry, because we also sell products. We still sell, health insurance plans to companies who need them. But we also built our own plan and sell that to people that need it too. So it's been an interesting evolution, and to watch our team evolve and to watch my wife evolve, it's been very, very interesting and very rewarding.
That's great. I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about the transition and the evolution of the industry as a whole later in the conversation. But since you just mentioned kind of where you are with the health plan itself, I mean, this is something that is starting to take off. I know it's still probably a limited number of them around the country, but like, can you talk a little bit about what made you want to form your own health plan? And then as a second part, like, how is that going? How is that being received locally with, employers, with the hospital systems, things like that?
Yeah, I think it started multiple years ago, maybe 8 or 9 years ago for me, when I was attending some industry conferences, including Benefits Pro, and some of the consultants and advisors that I was meeting around the country and through organizations like Benefits Pro and Health Rosetta in particular, just started having some conversations and watching and listening very intently about what other people were doing around the country or what could be done. And a lot of these concepts were concepts, to truth be told, in the beginning. But we were extremely excited and motivated to come back here to Texas and try to implement some of the strategies that were resonating with employer groups. And so we tried to figure this out of how you can deploy specific types of strategies within legacy plans, and we've quickly found out that we hit a lot of roadblocks, to put it kindly, Paul, where it just wasn't going to be possible to do a PBM carve out with a major carrier or go self-funded in a specific way or use specific strategies, because the carriers simply wouldn't allow for it, or the networks wouldn't allow for our plan designs, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that we did just what I think any other American entrepreneur would do. And if something doesn't exist, but it needs to exist, you go create it. You just go build it. So that put us on a trajectory of trying to find administrative partners and stop loss partners and all different types of partners that not only shared our vision, but had the capacity and the capability to build High Plains Health Plan the way we wanted to build it for our constituents. And so we've done that, and we've successfully done that. So that's what kind of led to it, was just number one, being exposed and introduced to specific types of very effective strategies, and having that desire and that passion to want to come back home and implement, these solutions. There wasn't a product to deliver it all in our market, so we needed to build one, and that's what we set ourselves to doing.
Yeah, I mean, good for you for taking something that you heard and learned about and making it a reality. Because I know that's one of the challenges. I mean, you mentioned the expo. You're always a big part of that, and Health Rosetta. I see you there. I've seen you at Q4 Live. I know that those types of events play a key role for a lot of advisors like you, because you're kind of on the leading edge, and there's not always a lot of information out there about how to do some of this stuff. Would you mind just talking a little bit about the importance of kind of live networking, whether it's at the BenefitsPRO Broker Expo, which is coming up here in April? I know you'll be there teaching classes, as you always do, and leading. What is the value of something like the Expo or Health Rosetta? What have you gotten from that, and why would you encourage other advisors and brokers to do that?
Yeah, I think it's invaluable. I think that any professional needs a professional network of people that you can trade ideas with. And, as they say, and as scripture tells us, iron sharpens iron. And so that's certainly been the case for me personally and professionally. is I've met a lot of great friends and made a lot of great friends. And it started at, we joke because there was a conference, it was either 2018 or 2019. You were there, but it was the Q4I conference in Tampa, the first one that I went to. And I just think that at that time period, everything was kind of culminating and starting to crescendo, and we were reaching the apex of the movement and what we call the movement with ideas, and just the energy level was the highest I'd ever seen at an industry conference. And then that has waned a little bit, but not necessarily the actual, but we're getting so much done. You know, it was one thing to be really amped up about all of these strategies and ideas and concepts. And I think that a lot of people that are associated with Health Rosetta and Q4 and people that come to the Benefits Pro Broker Expo every year, these are people that are looking to do something more innovative, more creative. A lot of people set out to do the work and are doing the work. And so I don't think that the passion has subsided. I think that we all have just gotten into the trench, right? And said, okay, now we've got to dedicate our work to this work and this mission. And so, but no, I think it's invaluable for people to find other like-minded people, people that are philosophically aligned and share our interests and share our passions, and then also are open to collaboration. I mean, it's more collaborative now, I think, than ever before. And we're in a pretty competitive industry, but it's been a blessing to me to meet so many people in our industry and learn from them, that I would encourage anybody to come to these conferences like Broker Expo and like the Q4 conferences and the Health Rosetta conferences. It is where innovation is taking place. It's not just in the content either of the conferences. It's very much in the connections that are made with other people in our industry.
I love that. I think one of my favorite things about the expo as well is exactly what you said. People go because they want to innovate and collaborate and push each other with their passion. And I love that. Last year at the expo, you were on a panel discussing creative destruction and how disruption is not the enemy. And I feel like most people in this industry can agree with that. But can you tell us a little more about that and why you believe this kind of disruption is so important to the industry?
Yeah, creative destruction. We named our session that last year at the expo based on a book that was written by Richard Nolan and David Crossan about how, there's 6 stages of process for transforming an organization or an industry. We kind of went through those, and I just think that, like so many other things, that if it's going to grow to another level or if it's going to evolve to another level, destroying legacy systems and legacy mindsets is part of that natural process, and it's not negative. I know that it may be received negative. And Paul, one of the questions you asked me a minute ago is, how is High Plains Health Plan being received and things like that in our local market? It's a mixed bag. There are players and organizations within our industry that do not want the status quo disrupted. They don't want to see this industry disrupted, and I certainly understand it. And I can, even to a degree, empathize with it a little bit. Nobody wants to make less money. Nobody wants to get blockbustered, right, and rendered obsolete. But I think that we've reached a tipping point in this country with healthcare and health benefits that it has to be disrupted. And we have to creatively destroy systems, not necessarily tweak systems or try to make them better. I think that we need to create a whole new system of the way we deliver healthcare in this country and the way we pay for it. That's where I come in. It's like, I'm not a healthcare professional. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a clinician. But we are finding so much synergy with the clinical community. It's very inspiring to see what is possible, what can be built within even a very small community like Amarillo in the Texas Panhandle, when the clinical world and the payer world finally see eye to eye and like, hey, we've got a problem we need to fix here, and it's a problem we all face in 2 different industries. And to me, that's just a natural part of any process, whether it's our industry or our organization. Butler Benefits and High Plains Health Plan, we are not the organization that we were in 2015. And you can attribute that to creative destruction. We have to constantly reinvent and reassess and pivot and whatever it takes. I just think that's the natural evolution of business and our economy, the way it's structured. So I won't get too philosophical on economics, but I mean, I think it's a for us organizationally, it's a very much an entrenched philosophy within our growth model is we have to continually, what we're doing today is probably not what we're going to be doing in a year from now. It's going to evolve. It's going to, take a different shape, and we have to be ready for that. Not only be ready for it, we have to drive that in our industry. And I think that's very important.
No, that's a great answer. I mean, I think it's one of the things that I like about getting to know this industry and covering this industry over the years is that excitement and that willingness to constantly evolve and kind of be the change. I know that's kind of a corny cliche, but it's true. So many of you are creating that change. Although a lot of the disruption does come internally, I think one of the things that Lily and I have noticed covering this industry is there is a lot that's happening in national headlines, though,
Right.
that is starting to change. And some of the stuff that I've heard all of you saying for years is starting to show up in national headlines, which is really interesting to me. We see a lot of conversation or a lot of headlines around, like the fiduciary conversation these days,
Yeah.
hospital transparency, other key areas like that that I've heard all of you talking about. So, what is your take on where things stand if you're taking it out to, even if it is to like the national level, the government, regulators, things like that? What are you watching closely right now? And do you feel like maybe some of that is starting to catch on?
Well, I do think it's starting to catch on, Paul. But my question back to you is, did you think we were just jerking your chain all those years? you
No,
know,
I was drinking the Kool-Aid, but I didn't know. I think for so many years I heard advisors and other benefits professionals saying we can't look anywhere else but internally because there's no
that's right.
guarantee that these changes are going to ever catch on a bigger level. I think there was always some of this underdog mentality of like, we need to do it ourselves because nobody else is going to do it for us. And I still think that's true, or at least that's the perception. But I have been kind of fascinated to see that it
Yeah.
does seem like it is starting to ripple out into other areas.
Well, I won't say the name of the person, but I had a very good, I would say, a good conversation, a lively conversation. This has probably been 6 or 7 years ago with another consultant who thought the mission was to do away with or to the BUCAs, the Blues of the world, United, Cigna, Aetna, that these companies would just go away, that our model would render them obsolete. And I've never believed that. And I don't believe it today because I think that those organizations are not loyal to a principle per se. They're loyal to what works and what is trending. And so if our model becomes the predominant model in healthcare, that's fine. They'll just co opt it as well and they'll start to do what we do. And we're already starting to see that. And we are starting to see the industry shift a little bit towards transparency and openness. Although there's a lot of reluctant organizations that don't want anything to do with transparency, but because of the legislative climate and everything else that's coming along with it, educated plan sponsors, as employers start to get more and more and more emboldened and educated, they're asking for more and more transparency. I want to see my contracts. I want to see my data. I want my claims data. I want these transparency and coverage files. I want to be able to use this information and data to properly manage our health plan. And that's what a fiduciary is supposed to do, right? It's so crazy that this is the only industry where employers are asked to not behave like buyers, right? And so I think that now employers, a few at a time, here and there, more and more and more, it's starting to build this momentum where they're understanding that they are true buyers in this market and that you can't be a true buyer without certain information. And then you bring in the legal aspect of everything and the litigious aspect of everything, as now we're starting to see lawsuits where brokers are being named, HR managers are being named individually in lawsuits over these issues we've been talking about for years in healthcare. And even if the lawsuits aren't successful, I mean, I don't want to get named in a lawsuit, right? I don't think
Right.
Paul wants to be named in a lawsuit,
Definitely not.
and so I do think that it's having an impact in our industry, but it's exposing our industry. And it's unfortunate, but this is true about a lot of industries and a lot of problems in our country is that sometimes they don't get fixed until they're exposed. And I hate that it just doesn't fix itself and everybody's altruistic and says, oh, let's go fix this because it's not right. Sometimes change is forced upon an industry through exposure. And I think we're seeing a little bit of both.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. I mean, just to follow up on that, you talked about the employers, and that's exactly where we're seeing a lot of it. But I do know that the hospital systems, the doctors, they're getting a lot of pressure from regulators and others as well, from the hospital transparency and a bunch of other angles.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything that you wanted to say about that? Are you seeing any changes in their attitudes, or if you're pitching RBP to some of these hospital systems, are you seeing any changes with the way that they're viewing things? Do you feel like the changes are rippling out into that community as well?
I think yes and no, but largely and a lot of people predicted this, was all of that access to information from these transparency and coverage rules, which also require insurance companies to disclose their contracted rates with other hospitals. Now, that's allowing hospitals to mine and scrape the same data and the same information, but they're not using it to lower costs. They're using it to say, hey, listen, you're paying my competitor 20% more than you're paying me. I want a higher rate. So I think that it's working both directions, where there are players in the healthcare space that are using these laws, that are using this newfound transparency within these large, massive data files to increase pricing, to increase their margins. But of course, you're going to have the inverse, where plan sponsors and consultants like myself are using it to help lower and help negotiate better lower contracts. But it's very, very intriguing and interesting because you're seeing the same data sets and the same pieces of legislation being wielded and used for much different purposes. And so who's going to win out? I'm optimistic our side's going to win because I always think philosophically we're in the right? So
Right, exactly. No, it's a good point. I mean, I know that some people had kind of feared and predicted that that could happen. And it is kind of,
for sure.
I guess, not surprising, but a little disheartening to see it happening in real life. But like you said, I would like to think that over time that the side who seems to me to be in the right will win out. So yeah, no, that's a
Well,
really
I
good
mean,
point.
here's a prime example of another piece of legislation, the No Surprises Act, NSA. Our industry, I think, was very excited to finally see the government take steps and take measures to protect people from balance billing in emergent situations, hence the No Surprises Act. But when you look at NSA cases that go to what's called IDR, independent dispute resolution, the healthcare providers like the air ambulance companies and the out of network standalone ERs and out of network healthcare providers, they're winning these IDR cases about 80 to 85% of the time at much higher prices than we ever anticipated. So, again, just because there's a piece of legislation that we think is going to really help reduce healthcare costs, that doesn't necessarily always shake out to be the actual outcome. And NSA is a perfect example of that, where these out of network providers are winning their argument, which is charging $85,000 for an air ambulance ride more times than they're losing that argument. And so that's a little frustrating. That's a little disheartening through what we think is a transparent and fair process that, it's resulting in higher costs for plan sponsors. And so we just have to continue to use the data to educate and let the payers make, I would say, more fiduciary type of decisions. You can't really be a fiduciary without the information, though.
No, that's a great answer. And your answer actually, I know what Lily's going to ask you next, and I think it adds an interesting wrinkle. So here you go, Lily.
Yeah, I agree. This is also my favorite question to ask anyone because everyone comes up with a different answer. And you, honest to God, Josh set us up so perfectly for it. So, if you could enact one policy change at a federal level to address any of these problems, what would it be and why?
At a federal level, oh my gosh, this is a tough one because I don't want to be a price fixer, right? So I'm not going to go that far. I would probably I would address networks because I think this is the last bastion of I would say the grip that is the status quo has on our systems, this delineation between in network and out of network. I don't know. I mean, we don't have networks for a whole lot of other things. I mean, of course, we have membership models. I mean, all across this country, and we have them even in healthcare. But I think that this is one of the last really misunderstood value propositions of the major carriers is this whole concept of networks. So that's probably from a legislative perspective what I would lean towards. And then, of course, I won't even get into the pharmacy space, but there's a lot going on there, reining in the ambiguity and the opaqueness of that industry. What's allowed to occur in that portion of our economy is illegal in so many other sectors that I think that the government is trying to get their head around it, number one, because it is so complex and massive and it's so important. I mean, look how many people in this country take prescription drugs, and the fear is that if you disrupt it too much, are you going to disrupt people's actual care? And I get that, I understand that, but at the same time, it is pretty egregious. And so those two areas, I think, networks and pharmacy is where I would like to see some more legislative action.
Yeah, I love that. As somebody, Lily and I, our employer just recently, switched health plans, and we're going through that whole thing of figuring out what's in network and what's not, and is my doctor still covered? So I would be all about getting rid of those for sure. I'm with you. So we've talked about this, how the industry has long been kind of mired in the status quo. And normally we ask people if you see that shifting at all. But I know from your answers today and just having talked to you, I know you do feel like truly there is a lot of momentum and change happening. But I'll kind of tweak this question a little bit. How do you see, or how can this industry continue to keep our current momentum going? How can we continue to improve when it comes to innovation, adapting, bringing in younger and more diverse candidates, to make sure that this doesn't just turn out to be a little snapshot, but that it can keep on going? Any thoughts about that?
Financial performance is always going to be a leading indicator because in our industry, still to this day, I think more plan sponsors are still very heavily price conscientious. That's what leads their decision making process. They're looking for the cheapest premium or they're looking for the lowest premium. And so I think staying competitive in these types of innovative plan designs is going to be critical. We have to do a good job of managing risks for the purpose of keeping the premium down, because that's still going to be the leading indicator for adoption of these types of plans. And, I just can't wait till the day, Paul, when we see, I just don't understand why, like, our plan model has $0 deductibles and $0 copays, and in many instances, 0% coinsurance, and we're removing or greatly lowering those financial barriers to good quality healthcare in this country. We're solving the access problem. Is that why that's still considered fringe? Why is helping people reduce their out-of-pocket costs for healthcare still considered unconventional in our industry? It should be considered the goal, the mission. And if you can do it without increasing plan sponsor costs, that's the ghost that employers have been chasing for decades. And if we can finally deliver it, why is this considered unconventional? Why is it considered disruptive? Why isn't it seen more in a positive light? And so to me, that's where I'm a little impatient, right? It's like, look at what these plans, and High Plains is not the only plan that does that. There's lots of very, very qualified and talented people out there building the same types of plans and the same types of models. All of ours are a little bit different, but they should be, right? When is it going to become normal to help people in this area? And I think that's the most intriguing part about it to me, is why these things are considered non-traditional and unconventional and in some cases even disruptive. That's a negative connotation when what we're doing is anything but.
I love that.
Well, we talk a lot with our guests about, that kind of change and trying to make it a positive, and we're excited that the industry is changing. But the day-to-day reality of creating this change is grueling and tough. How do you stay motivated and not get discouraged when it gets that negative connotation or intimidated while trying to help change the industry?
That's a great question. It really is, because that is one of the biggest challenges that we have, is staying positive. There's so much to fix. There's so many minds to change. There's so many problems to solve that sometimes it does feel insurmountable. But then we just have to keep it on the micro level and just look at your daily wins. Today we helped a person get a routine doctor visit with a $0 copay. I'm doing analysis today for preparation for meetings with a large client later in the week, and they have 80% of their all of their doctor visits came with a $0 copay. And just kind of just keeping your eye on the patient, the member. It's about them. And if we can help those people, and we're helping hundreds at a time, thousands at a time, then if that doesn't motivate me, then there's something wrong with, what I'm trying to accomplish. My priorities are mixed up. And so another consultant really helped me with that several years ago, to keep your eye on what your real mission is. Is your real mission to build a successful company for yourself? Well, it's part of my mission, but is it your primary mission? And if the primary mission stays, I want to help people. I want to help people be able to afford their medications and afford their doctor visits and their surgeries, and where they don't have to stress and worry or go into bankruptcy or into debt to receive medical care, then that is a really a good mission. And that keeps us motivated. But it is hard, Lily. You're right. It is the day-to-day grind, and a lot of people don't want to change. They just want to have that insurance card that when I flop it down, everybody recognizes it and they take it, and I pay my deductible or copay and I move on. A lot of people still want that. Our plans need to get there. Once our
Yeah.
plans become as easy to use and as easy to recognize, then I think perceptions will change.
That's a great answer. And I know, from talking to so many of you and interacting with you, a lot of the encouragement is internal through mastermind groups and even just a phone call with text, things like that. But I know you've also kind of somewhat embraced the role as a leader in this industry and kind of creating this change. And sometimes that means social media, sometimes that means speaking at industry conferences, things like that. Can you talk a little bit about why you feel it's important to be a visible leader in this industry? Like, do you have any advice for other advisors on how to leverage things like social media or speaking opportunities to kind of not just promote yourself, but to promote this idea and kind of stand up for what you feel like is right?
Yeah, I've never aspired to be any type of, leader, or except in our own organizations and in my own family. But if somebody wants to call me a leader in our industry, I appreciate that. I
Well, I
think that
just did.
sometimes, well, thank you. I think that sometimes I'm a voice for what a lot of people are thinking. I'm willing to say what a lot of people think. And I go a lot of places, and I guess you could call me a nosy person because I listen to conversations in public a lot. And I was doing this just this week. And it doesn't matter where you go, people are interested in and they're talking about, they're frustrated with healthcare. They're frustrated with these types of things. And I think that giving voice to that is part of what I do, but also helping people solve it. From a leadership perspective, again, it just really comes down to, this is a problem. I see the problem fairly clearly, and I don't have a way to fix it. I don't have a way to help people the way I want to help people in this model over here. So we've got to just go build something over here that will accomplish what I want to accomplish. And if that makes us leaders, and of course we get a lot of phone calls and people ask us, how do you do what you do? How did you start? How did you get started with direct contract? And we're always willing, because I've learned from so many people in this industry that are much smarter than I am. And so I feel like we have an obligation to kind of, and this is working on me, Paul. I mean, this whole thing is working on me internally, because I'm still very, very competitive, right? And I do want to build an extremely successful company. But then, as the longer I do this work and the longer our team does this work, the more willing we are to teach and to share, because man, the problem is so big. Butler Benefits is just nothing compared to the problem, right? We need so many other people and organizations to step forward in this country to do similar work. I don't say replicate our model. I'm just saying have that shift and have that mindset shift for starters, and let's move this industry in the right direction. That's hard.
Yeah. No, but it's one of the things that I love about this industry and so many of the people in this industry is I feel like it could go one of two ways. It could be all negative and pointing out only the bad,
Yeah.
or it could be really Pollyanna and like this is what we need to do and like pie in the sky. And neither one of those I think would be very effective. So I think for people like you and there are others in our industry who do it really well, to me the key is kind of balancing that and acknowledging the real issues and having a little bit of anger and a little bit of frustration, but balancing it with some optimism and some growth. I think to me that's kind of why this movement continues to be so successful. Is it's finding that perfect balance of what people need and want to hear.
I agree. I think in a lot of organizations, they didn't get into business to be healthcare managers, right? They're steel manufacturers and they're cattle feedlots and they're working ranches and, they're IT companies. They didn't start these organizations to get into the healthcare business. And so I think there is a lot of people out there that just want it easy. They just want it to be quiet. They want it to be easy. They want it to be something that's halfway affordable. And so I don't think that every single employer is a candidate for our plan model or, this type of disruption. They don't want it in their business. And that's perfectly fine too, because I hear a lot of voices out there in the country that are just very fed up with healthcare. They're frustrated with the status quo system and they're hungry for alternative versions. And so we offer it. But the more and more this becomes the normal, like I said, I'm waiting for the day when it just becomes conventional. This is what you do, right? You offer plans like this. And so I don't know if we'll ever get there, but we certainly are aspiring for the country to get there. I don't want to see single payer. I don't think the number of payers in this country is our problem. I think that we all fundamentally understand the root cause of our issues in healthcare. I haven't found a politician yet, Paul, that's got the testicular fortitude to address it. As Dave Chase always famously says, the cavalry's not coming from Washington. It's just
Right.
not.
Right.
And so, anyways,
Yeah, that's good.
All right, well, we're about to wrap up the first part of our interview, and then we'll hop into, the more like personal getting to know you part. But before we hop into that, we're going to ask you to finish this sentence as succinctly as you can. The thing that makes me most excited about the future of our industry is.
that makes me excited about our industry. Oh my goodness. Just the ability to innovate, finding that ecosystem where you can do innovative and creative things.
That's a
I
great
love
answer.
that.
I do too. Well, as Lily hinted, we're wrapping up our chat with you today, but we like to ask a few fun questions to kind of close
Sure.
things out. And so, as we mentioned earlier, this industry can be pretty rough on people. It's important work that all of you are doing, but it can be grueling, it can be tough. So, how do you relax and refresh in your free time, if you have any free time, that is?
I do, Paul, from on occasion get to enjoy some free time. You know my wife. A lot of
I
people in the
do.
industry know my wife because she's not just my wife, my life partner, she's my business partner and she's brilliant. She's also brilliant at planning vacations.
Oh, nice.
So she does a pretty good job of keeping us on the road, but that can be tiresome. But at the same time, she's great. We like to travel. We like to eat good food, go to cool places, and just get some downtime. I think it's very important. It's important for me, and she's starting to Paul. I say starting to come around to my way of how to vacation. When I go on vacation, I'm a rester. I want to
Right.
lounge. I want to sleep. I want to eat good food and drink good wine and have good cocktails and laugh and just really decompress. When my wife goes on vacation, man, she wants to like work out and she wants to go on 15-mile hikes. And I'm like, what? I can't do all this. I need to come and rest. And so we get a little mixture of both. But yeah, we travel quite a bit and retreating into my friends, their colleagues, and we do talk a lot about work. But like I mentioned earlier, I've met so many great people in this industry that have been close friends, not just colleagues. And so getting to know their families and cutting up and making fun of our industry a lot and just making fun of ourselves a lot is a big part of what we do. So that's how I kind of unwind a little bit. And of course, you know me, Paul. I'm always going to have a sip of bourbon here and there. So
I know. I was going to mention that. That might make it into my last question. Yeah. All right.
We also like to ask our guests for recommendations, whether that's books, movies, TV shows, podcasts, anything on earth
Or
that you would
bourbon.
like to. Yeah, I was going to say bourbon, recipes, quite literally anything that tickles your fancy that you want to share.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Loaded
Yeah, I
question.
mean that's a big broad question. Recommendations: get away from work for a little bit. Mine is with kids and basketball. The last few years, I've coached my oldest son's basketball team and got to spend a lot of time with him. It's every dad's dream, really, to kind of coach your kids in sports. My dad coached me all through my early childhood and up until I got into public schooling and stuff. But find some time to decompress and do something not work related. And we spend a lot of time in the woods. We travel. We play sports, and getting my mind off work is something that I need. I don't do it as much as I should. I can say that's what I would recommend for people is whether it's working out and exercising or hunting and fishing or cooking and whatever it is. Find some personal time with your family and enjoy those moments because they sure go by quick.
Oh, couldn't agree more. That's one of the biggest things as I've gotten older that I feel like, and a lot of people, I think, as you get older, you start to realize, yes, work and all these other things are a big part of what we do. But I completely agree with you. Just, I think one of the keys is to find those other things that sustain you and keep you going. So that's a great answer. Well, you mentioned travel earlier. I would love to hear about any recent great trips you had or any upcoming trips that you have, even if you give Allison all the credit for planning them. Tying into that, I know that you're a big fan of where you live, Amarillo. So I would also, we like to ask our guests for a little bit of insider information. When people are down in your neck of the woods, what are a few secrets or some things that people might not know about Amarillo that they should know next time they come down there?
So let me tackle these one at a time. So I'll give you two examples. I could give you more, but I'm going to give you two. So every year we go to Florida and we go down to Seaside and Watercolor, in that the 30A part of Florida, and we go with some friends that they bring their kids and we bring our kids. And if you've ever been there, it's like straight out of a storybook, right? I mean, it's just all families and a lot of bike riding and hiking, and I mean, it's just an amazing little part of the country. And we always look forward to that trip. We get a lot of good rest and good quality time with the kids. But my wife and I, for our 10-year anniversary several years ago, we went on a trip with another couple friends from ours from Austin, Brett and Amanda Brummett. And we went to this very exclusive resort in Costa Rica, and it was incredible. And so Brett and I we're talking this week, and my wife and I were talking last week. I'm like, I'm ready to go back to Costa Rica. But anyways, if you've never been, that's a trip that I would encourage couples to go on. We certainly didn't take the kids here to this trip, but it is an oasis, and it is a true, quiet, peaceful place. It's beautiful. The weather's great. The hospitality was amazing. So there's places like that all over the world, Paul. But for me, Florida was every year that's a great trip for us. And then Costa Rica was great. I would highly recommend it.
Love that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then
And
what about bringing it closer to home? I know that you are a big fan of Amarillo. I've heard you talk many times about how much you love that community and all of that. So if somebody's going to be headed down that way, what are some things that people may not know about it, or a great restaurant, or just anything like that that you'd like to share about Amarillo?
well, Amarillo is an interesting town. Aside from being the windiest town and city in the United States, and that is a fact, we have the highest average wind speed of any city in the United States. When the wind doesn't blow, Paul, it's a pretty awesome place to live. When the wind doesn't blow and we get rain, it's amazing. But it's home to the nation's second largest canyon. You can see Palo Duro Canyon. It's beautiful. But per capita, Amarillo is great dining. And we've got some locally owned restaurants, not a lot of chains. We have chain restaurants here, of course, but lots of really good, high quality places to go eat and have fun. But it's always the people. I've always said this about Amarillo. It's the largest small town I've ever lived in. I can't go anywhere in town without bumping into somebody that I know. And I grew up in a very small town, so still having that feel and that aspect, and everybody here's friendly. And so we're very blessed to live where we live, except for the weather. It is windy all the dang time, and I hate the
Uh,
wind. But other than that, Amarillo is a wonderful place. And if anybody's listening and you're passing through, maybe going snow skiing or want to come see the canyon or something, give us a shout.
I love it. Well, and since we teased it, I better not leave people hanging. You got to give me what's your top shelf bourbon recommendation and what's a good everyday kind of standard bourbon that you would recommend.
So my favorite standard day to day is probably Weller 12 year special reserve. That's I love Weller. Top shelf, there's so many good ones. I like Angel's Envy. I like Blanton's. Those are always good picks. But I'm into one right now from California. I know, don't throw rocks at me. It's not a Kentucky bourbon. People are going to be like, that's not, I mean, how could you be drinking bourbon from California? Well, it's really good. It's called Pipe Dream. It's one that I really enjoyed. So very affordable. And so it's just one of those hobbies, where
Yeah.
it's like having fine wine or cigars. I don't know. Just my doctor tells me it's not a healthy habit, but oh well.
You got to have a few that aren't healthy. And I will
Yeah.
just tell anybody out there listening, if you're ever at a show with Josh, I would definitely recommend grabbing a drink and just sitting down. I've done that many times, and he's a great guy to just hang out with too. So yeah, no, that's
You are
perfect.
too, Paul. You always have good conversations other than business. I like those
Other
kind
than
of
business, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. You got to get away from that sometimes. Love it.
absolutely.
I love it. Well, thank you, Josh, so much for joining us on the show today.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. It's been fun.
Thanks, Josh. For all of our listeners, please subscribe to Beyond Benefits with Benefits Pro anywhere you get your podcasts. And if you want to rate us, we'd love your feedback. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email me over at pwilson@benefitspro.com, or you can email Lily at lpeterson@alm.com.
And thank you to our producer, Zach. Join us again next time for a new episode of Beyond Benefits with Benefits Pro. Until then, thanks for listening.